I said at the start of this year that 2024 could well be a glorious year of the sauropod. And as time ticked on, we sauropod lovers ticked off each silhouette in this poster dropped so long ago. On the one hand, getting the Mamensisaurus and Yellowmosaurus made clear that Haolonggood means business and delivers. On the other, receiving the Yellowmosaurus and seeing how huge and heavy that was, I wondered how they'd ever make an Argentinosaurus. Well, that question is now answered. This is such a gargantuan monster that even the size of the box is awesome. For comparison, here's the Haolonggood Yellowmosaurus box, so you know you're in for a monster of cracker nest dimensions and a shipping fee of crippling proportions. Now this is the mother of all sauropods. This freak of nature is 85 centimeters, or 2.8 feet long horizontally, 51 centimeters, or 20.1 inches tall, and I estimate 105 centimeters, or 41.3 inches, through the centra. As fragmentary as Argentinosaurus is, it's ridiculous to claim any definite size, but generally I've seen through centra estimates of up to 35 meters, or 118 feet. Now that places this model in 1 to 33 scale. Now here's my Wonder Artistic Models 1 to 33 figure for you to have a look. But also the 1 to 35, so you can make your own decision. Just to give you a quick idea of size, the Haolonggood Yellowmosaurus I estimated to be 76 centimeters or 30 inches through the centra. And it's hilarious that I can now add only 76 centimeters through the centra compared to the Argentinosaurus, which is a whole 1/3 longer. And if I thought that Yellowmosaurus at 2 kilograms or 4.4 pounds was something, this Argentinosaurus is a bloody 4.8 kilograms or 10.6 pounds. To give you an idea what this is, if you go to the gym, it's a very common additional plate you put on a barbell or on a selectorized weight machine. This plate right here, if you drop this on your foot, your toes are gone. If you drop this on your head, you'll most likely be dead. There are 4 color variants this time, instead of the usual 3 offered for its other large sauropods, the Mamensisaurus and Yellowmosaurus. It was really confusing to choose from the release images because the colors look different across different pictures, but as you'll see, this is what I ended up with. DHLG 129 Blue Gongsun Sheng, which is ironically the very first variant I dismissed when the release images came out. Much of it is a very dark grey, almost black, with a few streaks for accenting that makes it look like a badass mofo. Now you'll see the color complexity up close in a while. In general, the pose is what I call safe and stable, and at almost 5 kilograms, I want it safe and stable. And it's undeniably solid and mighty. Still, you have this very active tail, hinting at an underlying energy, infusing a potentially boring pose with a clever dynamism. Nothing really jumps out right now, except that the head looks a tiny bit bigger than I'd expect, and there isn't an obvious kink where the sacrocaudal joint is. Maybe I'll feel different in the morning, but right now, having this monster in 1 to 35 earns many discounts from me. The sheer bulk and awe of the form is just pleasingly good. Now let's take a closer look, and given the size of this mama, I'll try my best to hold it or the camera steady. I just hope I don't blow out my back and shoulders. Now let's start at the head. Given how miserable or headless titanosaur remains generally are, reconstructions often borrow from better known titanosaurs like Nemegtosaurus, Tapuyasaurus, Sarmientosaurus, and Apatosaurus. This Haolonggood seems to borrow ideas and proportions from Nemegtosaurus and Tapuyasaurus, but other than that, I've nothing intelligent to say more about. We've seen the detail in other Haolonggood sauropods before, and with a larger canvas to play with, you wouldn't expect any less. You'll see that Haolonggood has opted for a slightly knobbier texture for parts of the head, but there's still a lot of variation in size and shape, evinced by what you'll see here in the scalation over the jugal, maxillary, and the premaxillary areas. Now, even more, look at the eyes. The sclera isn't just a single color, but actually has a nice gradation of different colors, with that pinpoint pupil very nicely painted here. The color accent around the eye seems to be quite roughly applied, but it's often the case over knobbier surfaces when viewed at such a close distance. The fade in the roof of the skull is more pleasingly blended in. And I like the contrasting color in the throat. There's a definite ramphatica, nicely ridged and textured. And even the soft tissue here has transitions of pink and red. Likewise, if I can just catch the light, you'll see the same kind of care taken in the mouth. Now here's where I look a gift horse in the mouth. You can see the teeth are individually sculpted, with an effort made to paint them very nicely, with an almost translucent sheen over them. But they look relatively large. They also look rather few in number and too spaced apart. Still, to put the size in perspective, here's my almond, so at real viewing distance, it's not something that really sticks out. Even in small areas we have so much detail, we expect a lot more in vaster expanses of flesh. And indeed we do. Every area is filled with detail. We've seen how minute Haolonggood can make its scales. And these minute scales keep up the standard seen from the very first Apatosaurus. And it's almost surreal when you see how filled up this huge model is with these details. Now these small scutes aren't coloured to stand out in a vulgar way, but tastefully blend into the rest of the animal. And some seem to even have keels. Now here at the base of the neck, I have to say that when the photos emerged, this strange looking cut looked suspiciously like a god-awful seam. Here in hand, now in the body. There's no need to repeat myself here, and to be honest, it's hard to talk and manipulate this thing. Anyway, you'll see the same kind of exquisite detail I always yammer on about, of Haolonggood's sauropods. Now here from the top is what really sells this paint job for me. Now look at how nice and forbidding this very dark central band looks. And yet here you also see a complexity and pattern in the way that the black markings are mixed into the orange patches. And just look at all this sculpted texture. I love how being so dark, or almost black, doesn't obliterate the detail, and it's more pleasing to look at because of the dark color. Another angle of the patterning here. I really love this kind of subtle patterning that isn't as obvious as sometimes done in other models, in a glaring K-drama product placement way. Rather, you'd have to discern them with difficulty, which is exactly what you see in many real animals, where you'd have to look hard to even realize there's a pattern. With saw the scutes in the neck earlier, and as they continue, they expand into larger, more discrete osteoderms, breaking up and lending visual interest to what might otherwise be a featureless expanse of flesh. And here we have the more spike-like ones up the back. But we should remember that yes, we do have evidence of titanosaur osteoderms, but the density of these osteoderms per animal, as often depicted, is quite speculative. I talk about this in my PNSO Alamosaurus review. I love how the osteoderms are painted. There are subtle variations of color. And in areas where they're wholly subdermal, they're colored the same, so they blend into the surrounding canvas instead of being highlighted in a ridiculously different color. As we continue on, you'll see the meticulous attention paid to the entire expanse of skin, treated with all mix and manner of fine scales and folds. And going down the shoulder, again, every area is infused with scales, and importantly, there seems to be a logic to how they integrate with the creases and the flow with every fold. They almost, I want to say, dress the animal, as you'll appreciate following the flow from the shoulder down to the very powerfully muscular arm and the forearm, then the hands, which is typically derived Titanosaurian without a thumb claw. The effect is wonderful, as you see how they interplay with the creases and the folds in the loose skin here going down the neck. The number of scales strikes me as being almost infinite. Then the hip area. Now just look at this mosaic of interlocking scales. I know I keep saying that. And down the thighs, the legs, beautiful skin texture replete with intricate, exquisite detail. Feet. Scales, folds, just textures and textures, and all imbued with a naturally looking paint application. And finally, that tail here. Nicely raised and curving up. Then curling down again to convey a living liveliness to a monstrous bulk of animal. Unfortunately, there's a rather glaring seam line here as well. And you notice here even the very faint stripes on the tail, which are barely discernible. Now a look at the underside. Oh man, this thing is heavy! And here's a major reason for that huge vat-like gut. Now this is nicely and broadly bulbous, and you can imagine all the internal machinery chugging away to power this monstrous sauropod. So there's the model. The more I look at it, the more I like the dark and forbidding coloration, broken up only in patches of naturally blended patterns. Now this streak going down with that pink surrounded by black looks really good, adding just that little touch of visual interest, but in its sparseness, highlighting just how dark this is. Very goth. Now this model doesn't come with a base, and I think we don't need another item to increase the weight and shipping. It does come with a few gifts. There's some playing cards, posters of some of the models, I think the one that most people really want, the Haolonggood. This guy I'll talk about in another video.